Alrighty, so we are on with Dr. B as we are commemorating World Diabetes Day. Good morning, Dr. B.
Good morning. I really think we should start a music show.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's festive. It's all caroly. Everybody's decorating, and I am singing like Mariah Carey this month.
Well, you sing away. We're going to be commemorating World Diabetes Month or Day, which was last month, November. So it's a little bit later, but an important subject that some of our listeners have asked why we're not talking about such an important condition. Well, we were talking about men's health, and then that's just as important. So this month we're talking about diabetes, and this is really a major killer. So it's something that is catching up to the commonest cause of death worldwide, which is heart disease. But,
yes.
It's the second after heart disease, and really is literally drowning our nation, our region, and our continent. And it's estimated by the World Health Organization that our continent is going to have the most rapidly growing group of diabetics worldwide, and certainly by 2030, there's going to be an increase of almost 50% of patients diabetic. And this is really important to understand. Well, let's first talk about what it is. Diabetes basically is a condition where the body cannot handle the sugar that you're consuming. And that sugar is not necessarily the sugar you put in your tea or your coffee. We've talked about this before. It's the sugar that you find in that horrible word starch, that processed starch that we're talking about. And for listeners out there, we're talking about there are two types of diabetes. One is type 1 diabetes, where you basically, it occurs in childhood, and it's as a result of the organ in your body known as the pancreas is not able to manufacture insulin. And recent breakthroughs, very exciting breakthroughs, suggest that there's going to be a cure for this. And this is not what we're talking about. Because they're going to do pancreatic transplants, they're going to do stem cell stuff, and a lot of children will be saved the nightmare of injecting themselves with insulin. Now, this type of diabetes actually hasn't increased worldwide at all. The type of diabetes we're talking about, Zoo, is the one that we used to call actually adult onset diabetes, but we're actually now seeing it in children as well. And this is largely related to lifestyle. And as we move from, I guess, the cattle post to the car, we change a lot of our habits, and the habits become bad habits. And the biggest issue is our waist circumference.
Yes.
That begins to, the closer you get to the city, the bigger your waist circumference. Everybody knows that. And it's largely as a result of all the things that you see advertised as you driving into, Soroe or Palape or Habaroni. You'll see these big billboards beckoning you to eat all the crappy food that's there in those shopping malls.
Yes.
And the foods that we're talking about are literally processed starches. We're talking about the things we talk about every week, whether it's men's health or diabetes health or heart health. We're talking about processed carbohydrates. It's important for people out there to understand that your body cannot do without fat, and it cannot do without protein, but it can definitely do without starch. And the starch we're talking about are the things that we love. The bread and the rice and the pasta and the fresh chips and the magrinya and all that stuff is just loaded with sugar. And unfortunately, as a result of what I call the SAD diet, which is the standard American diet, we're eating a lot of the crappy stuff that's eaten in North America. We're talking about, the oats and the bran and the cornflakes and the muesli and the granola. And these are loaded, unfortunately, with sugar. And what's happened as a result is the body's ability to dispose of that sugar is really put on tension. And we develop what's called insulin resistance. In other words, more and more insulin is actually having to be manufactured to drop that sugar. And eventually, the pancreas fails and the body becomes diabetic, where the sugar just hangs around in the body. And that's what happens with diabetes. And why are we talking about this? Because sugar is actually even probably more poisonous than alcohol in terms of its effect on the body. And I can name every single organ in the body is affected by diabetes, and we're seeing horrendous complications, unfortunately, because a bit like heart disease, a lot of the diabetes that we see, has been hanging around in the system for more than 10 to 12 years. We estimate, or rather, scientists estimate that by the time a diabetic is diagnosed, they've been sitting with the condition for about 10 to 12 years.
Wow.
So, it produces very vague symptoms of tiredness and fatigue and maybe a little bit of blurred vision. And eventually, when the body's really not coping, the kidneys say, you know what, I'm gonna flush the sugar out. And you start peeing sugar into your urine. Diabetes mellitus, which is the proper name for this condition, is the Latin or Greek word for sweet urine. And in the old days, when we didn't have sugar testing, believe it or not...
No, don't say it.
we used to taste the urine.
No!
And it will have a syrupy color because the kidneys are trying to flush the stuff out. So one of the first organs that is actually crusted up like a toffee apple with sugar is the kidneys. And so you get kidney failure, the eyes get blocked up, and you get, a cataract, you get diabetic eye disease, or you get blind. Leading cause of blindness worldwide is diabetes. Leading cause of amputation worldwide is actually not road traffic accidents, it's actually diabetes, where it actually literally chews up your entire circulation system. And of course, it crusts up the arteries that supply oxygen to your heart, and you get a heart attack. It blocks up the nerves so that people can't feel. And so what happens is they poke themselves in the foot with a nail. They can't see the nail. The foot gets infected, and they come to the hospital, and we have to cut that leg off. So these are the complications that we see, unfortunately, end stage. And we're spending a fortune in our hospitals trying to manage the amputations and the blindness and the dialysis of kidneys and all this stuff. So this is really important. And if we go upstream, Zoo, which is what we're talking about today, the issue is prevention is worth a pound of cure. And the prevention is to stop those foods. And like we said, Zoo, type 2 diabetes is a lifestyle condition. So if you change your lifestyle, not your diet, because diets, you go on and off. If you change your lifestyle, you literally can reverse many of the diabetics out there taking pills and potions and injections, can actually stop them eventually if they are just careful about what they eat. So this is really important. And most of our hospitals out there are able to measure the sugar very quickly. We can do lots of different tests to check whether organs have been affected, and we can put you on a wonderful cocktail of medication. But think about upstream, that you don't want to get to the hospital. You want to prevent yourself getting from that hospital. And everybody listening out there has somebody who has either in the family or a partner or a sibling or a neighbor who they know is diabetic.
Yes, that is very true.
This is how common it is, and it's estimated 500 million diabetics by 2025. So that's an enormous amount of people worldwide to be affected by diabetes, and majority are without symptoms, so they don't know that they're walking around with this stuff. So my answer to how do you know you have diabetes is first check your abdominal circumference. If you, as a man, have an abdominal circumference of more than 90 centimeters and as a woman more than 80 centimeters, you are in trouble, because the fat around your abdomen contributes to the diabetes that we're talking about and the insulin resistance that we're talking about. So these important measures. The early symptoms, everybody knows about it. You spend lots of time in the loo. You get up at night frequently to empty your bladder because the kidney is flushing out the urine. You get very, very thirsty because you're flushing all that water out. You get dehydrated. You get blurred vision because the eyes are full of sugar. And then you start getting all the more complicated stuff like pins and needles and bokhatsu in your hands and feet. You get bushishi. You get cramps. And that's the sort of, now by that time we actually now need to start you on insulin and injections and all sorts of stuff. So this is really important, and it's the reason why the pharmaceutical industry is making a fortune in diabetic drugs, because what they're doing is treating the symptoms. And I'm no exception. As a doctor, I have to sometimes use these things to bring the sugar down, but we'll say to the patient, this is what you've done to cause this stuff. So reverse your diet and your lifestyle, and I promise you, exercise, lifestyle, portion restriction is the panacea, is the solution to a lot of things that we've talked about in the last 12 months.
Well, Dr. B, obviously the time has run out, but but I wanted to know, because there's a lot of us who are, drinking a lot of alcohol. Like you're saying, we're eating a lot of starches. We are we're just taking in a lot of bad things. How is the risk when you're an alcohol taker? What is the risk with diabetes?
I think you just read my mind. I think we're resonating on the same.
Yeah, Dr. B, you and I, we should start a podcast.
The topic for next week, because we're entering the festive season, is alcohol. It's a big word, and I'm going to be talking about alcohol, what its benefits, what its disbenefits are, what it does to you, why it causes diabetes. But in a nutshell, alcohol, you're just drinking empty calories. It's not the alcohol I'm worried about, it's the sugar. A 6-pack of Vinduk Light or St. Louis Light is literally the equivalent of about a loaf and a half of bread.
No.
Yeah.
So yeah, Dr. Bagger, I'm glad I asked that question, and you've already answered my next question, which is what we're doing next week. So I cannot wait to talk about the alcohol consumption and what it does.
Next week, you better sing our way out of this program.
All right, Dr. B. Bye. And that's Dr. B and I on the Health Check with First Capital Bank, brought to you by Yarn FM and the House of Zoo.
Health Check was proudly brought to you by First Capital Bank. Belief comes first.